Jak 2 was released in 2003 and was developed by series creator Naughty Dog and takes place directly after the events of the secret ending of Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy, as Jak and Daxter find a portal that sends them into the future, and soon Jak is captured and tortured and experimented on for 2 years. Then he finally escapes, meets back up with Daxter, and joins a band of rebels that are trying to take back their city from a maniacal leader. Guys, when I finally played Jak and Daxter, I became such a huge fan of this franchise. I absolutely adored that game and how beautiful the graphics were and how fun the world was, especially the platforming and the collectathon that game was. It was fresh, it was fun, and it's just a really, really solid game, and I was really excited to continue my journey with this series. Now, going into this, I knew that the franchise was going to have a bit of whiplash in the tone and the way the game was played. So I knew going in what I was expecting, but nothing could prepare me for what Jak 2 put me through in terms of its difficulty, its tone, its story, and I absolutely loved this game despite it being extremely frustrating. Starting off, I want to talk about the things that they fixed with this game from the first game to this game, and that is the controls. The jump button makes you really jump. That was my biggest problem with the first game, was the jumping mechanics and overall the controls in particular, especially the camera as well. All this stuff is fixed. The camera works the way it should. The jump button works the way it should. You have a really solid jump this time and an even better double jump and a high jump, and it's just great. It's so versatile this time, and it controls so much more smoothly than the first game. Also, Jak is able to run faster too, which also works, which was another problem. So basically, the controls work so much better. But basically, all those improvements really helped with my enjoyment of the game, and also what helped with my enjoyment of this game was its story. It was so engaging and fun and interesting and completely different from what we saw in Jak and Daxter. This is a much more mature, violent, and really kind of downer of a story. You're basically a rebel in a city filled with people that want you dead, and you're basically living in the underground, doing missions, and that is basically the biggest change of this game, despite its story and its tone and the fact that Jak talks. This game is not your typical collectathon platformer. All that is stripped away. The collecting is purely optional. There's not much of it. In fact, I didn't collect all of the precursor orbs just because they really weren't a driving force of this game. But what was the driving force was the gameplay and the story, and the gunplay in particular. Yes, you're using guns in this game this time around, but they give a really good story reason for it. You're not just using guns, you're using guns that use eco, the magic that is used in this universe. You get your blue eco, your red eco, your yellow eco, and so on. And I thought that was a really cool way of implementing stuff that was used in the first game and making it fresh and new. You also have missions in this game, and these are kind of like GTA missions in a lot of ways. In fact, you have this big open world to explore. This entire city is yours to run around in and go to different missions. Sometimes you get to exit the city, which is always a lot of fun because, if I'm being honest, I didn't love this whole sweeping city that I think a lot of people seem to absolutely love and like this, that you're in this bustling city that feels real in this very cartoony type game. However, I found it just kind of lifeless. Yes, there's a lot of people around, but it just felt like, they were just there walking around. You couldn't interact with any of them or anything. And also the driving in this game. This is what you will mostly be doing throughout this entire game, is driving from point A to point B to get to your other missions, and the driving can be a lot of fun. However, the problem is that the driving is really difficult sometimes, and it's due to the fact that there is always something in your way. You're always going to run into a guard and have to escape from them. You're always going to end up hitting something. It's just inevitable. And it was really frustrating when I was just trying to get to the next mission, or I was trying to complete a mission. It made it so much more difficult than it needed to be, and I died countless times because of it. And it was extremely frustrating. Definitely, for me, the most frustrating part of the game. And I will be going into something else that was really frustrating with this game too, but continuing on with stuff I love after that tangent, I also think that this game does a really good job of breaking up the monotony, which is something that the first game did too, with a couple of kind of side things to do when you're not, doing much of the story or anything. But there is some little mini games that you can do. These can be a lot of fun, if not a little frustrating, just because of how quick you have to be with your fingers on the controller. Some of this stuff was really difficult and frustrating, but enjoyable nonetheless. But my favorite stuff to do in this game was actually the racing. I really loved these moments in the game where you got to race around. I thought that was extremely fun. It was always a highlight for me. I always love racing in games because to me it's always kind of engaging, and again, it breaks up the monotony of the gunplay despite the gunplay being really good. I also like the voice acting in this game. Much like with the first game, which had really good voice acting, the voice acting is great here too. Jak talks this time, giving himself a personality that we can relate to or not relate to. Jak is really angsty in this game, and sometimes it can be a little frustrating at times. But it does give him some character, and it also, I think, enhances Daxter's comedy, which was a highlight of that first game. But it's even better here because Jak can react off of him in a way he couldn't in the first game. Also, the voice acting is really good with, big name actors that come in to play characters such as Clancy Brown, who voices our villain in the game. He's really great and menacing. He's just got a great voice, and overall it's a great villain, and it's complex, and the story overall is extremely complex, and I wasn't expecting that from some sort of cartoony type game, but it really worked. However, to me, what doesn't work is the difficulty of this game. This game is one of the most difficult games I have ever played. I've played the Dark Souls games, and those games are incredibly hard, but to me, they're fair. This game is really unfair at times, especially when it comes to the checkpoint system. The checkpoint system is not your friend in this game. You will have long stretches where you're trying to complete something and then you'll die and you have to go back 5 minutes and repeat it all over again and again and again until you finally figure it all out and can move on. And also, there was moments where I thought there was a checkpoint because there was a cutscene. No, just because there's a cutscene doesn't mean that's a checkpoint. You still have to go all the way back, and it was just really, really annoying. There's this moment that everybody talks about, especially with people that play hero mode, which I did not do, where you're basically stuck in a turret section and you have to not die. There's also a new mechanic in this game called Dark Jak, where Jak can basically turn into the dark version of himself, and it helps out in fighting enemies. I never use this that much. You basically get this ability by collecting Dark Eco, and once you have enough, you can transform. And I didn't use this really at all. It introduces it in one of the first cutscenes of the game, but really doesn't do anything with it story-wise, despite it being kind of important to the story in a lot of ways. But I didn't really use this. The only time I used it was for one instance when I faced off against the final boss. You can do a one-hit kill with him basically at the end if you dive bomb, and that's what I did, and I beat the game because of it. Jak II is a game that gives itself a completely new identity by the different things that it introduces, basically creating a completely different game from the first game. And in ways, I think it works, and in other ways, I think it doesn't work. The open world, like the first game, is really cool, but I think it's less interesting because you're stuck in a city the whole time that feels, to me, really lifeless. The mechanics are extremely annoying at times. The difficulty is frustrating. The gameplay is so engaging. The characters are so fun. The comedy is great. The visuals are great. And the story is a lot of fun and engaging, and it made me love this game despite all the things that were working against it. And that is the mark of a truly good game, when you can deal with the flaws of your game and still enjoy it. That is just amazing to me, and Jak II made it work. I loved Jak II. It frustrated me. Sometimes I hated it. I had to put it down. I had to cool down and think about it and then come back to it. But I always overcome it. And it made me feel satisfied when I would finally beat that section that was giving me a hard time. To me, it's not the most replayable of the Jak series. I'm thinking I'm definitely going to be playing the first game a lot more. But if I want a hard challenge that will test my patience, I'm going to play Jak II. And sometimes I want to be challenged. So anyway, guys, with all that said, I'm going to give Jak II an 8 out of 10. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I really enjoyed playing this game despite how frustrating it was, and I'm so excited to finally sit down and play Jak III as soon as I possibly can. I want to see how this franchise ends with Naughty Dog at the helm. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.